All right. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to talk about how to profit from the Canton Fair as an Amazon private label seller. Many of you know I just went to China here just a couple of weeks ago, I guess it is now, and got back. So I want to see if I can just download and tell you everything that I learned. And basically, I went over to not only buy products for my own business, Amazon private label business, but also to look at it through the eyes of an Amazon seller and really literally to blaze the trail and to see if it's worthwhile to go over and see if it's a way to profit from the business. And I have to say it was an amazing trip going over, and we're going to talk about all kinds of different details, all kinds of different things in regards to the fair going forward. So I almost feel like I'm doing a book report, like it's back in high school and I got a report on my trip to China. But hopefully you give me an A on my report card for what we're going to go over, because what we're going to cover today is basically I'm just going to give you a review of everything that I found with the hope here of being able to make this trip easier for you should you decide to go. So literally we're going to start out just with an overview, kind of what the fair is, what it isn't, and who should go, because I don't think the fair is for everybody. But I think if you're at a certain point in your business or you're willing to invest in your business at a certain level, I think it can be an incredible thing. We're going to talk about how to get the most out of your time. And that's something that the fair is so large, it can be a little bit overwhelming. I've kind of simplified this a little bit for you and I'm going to show you some things that I think will make it easier for you to go through should you choose to do. We're going to talk about finding products, what it's like to do there, and how to go through the process of finding them not only there, but in other places in China. We're going to talk about dealing with suppliers face-to-face while you're there, other suppliers, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the travel arrangements. And then all of these things, by the way, I did some things well. I made some mistakes. So hopefully you can benefit from what I did well, in addition to eliminating some of the mistakes that I made. And we're going to talk about an easier way to go to the fair, and then we're going to do a Q&A session after we talk about all that. So let's kind of get started and jump right in. For those of you who don't know me, and maybe this is the first time you've seen me, my name is Mark Scott Adams. I am a full-time Amazon private label seller, and in addition, I help other people with their Amazon businesses. I do all kinds of different things where I write blogs and all those kind of things, but just from a past, I've been a merchant for 2.5+ decades. I think it's like 26 years now. I've done private labeling in all different types of facets where I have bought and create private label products. I've done manufacturing to where I have done private label products for others. So even way before the internet, I was doing private label products. So I feel very, very comfortable in the knowledge of what I'm doing, the volumes of things that I've done, and all the different ways that I feel really good about just the industry of private labeling. And even though it was pre-internet, everything is the same. It's just the only thing that's really changed now is just the medium, and that's just selling online through Amazon as opposed to through your own chain of stores. I've done things like I started out with a chain of clothing stores, did a car bumper factory, and did a winery. That's where we did some of our own private label wine that we would make and then put other people's label on it. So that's kind of from the manufacturing side. I will say it was kind of fun in the winery to be the head taste tester. That was kind of a job that I did always enjoy. But a little bit about who I am. If you haven't seen me before, I do put out quite a bit of free information and resources to try and help you do better and do well as an Amazon seller. You can go to my website, which is markscottadams.com, and we have everything on there from there's like a 3-part video training series on how to get started, lots of blog posts, videos, all kinds of different things there. You can subscribe to my videos that I put out on YouTube. Just go to my YouTube channel. You'll see the link there, or just search the channel, or just search my name in there, which is Mark Scott Adams, and that should take you to the channel. A lot of good webinars and different videos and some helpful stuff there. If you're in a business in the business already, or you're looking to get started, you need a little bit of help with coaching, I do that. So just let me know what you need, and I can help you with that. I have a Facebook group for people who are learning about being a private label seller, and you can see the listing there. Just go there. And I also do a podcast on iTunes. So I try and cover a lot of different bases when it comes to going over things on Amazon. So anyway, with that said, a little bit of who I am, a little bit of some resources there for you to get started if you want. Let's just jump right in. Let's just start talking about the fair. And when I think about the fair, I have to admit, before I went over, I had a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of apprehension. It's a long trip. I really wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure about the size of the vendors. I wasn't sure about the language barrier. I've had the good fortune to travel quite a bit. I've been to close to 30 countries and like 47 states now. So I've traveled enough to where This is not like just getting in a plane and going to Europe, or if you're in Europe, I guess coming to the United States or something. But it's a doable trip. And part of what we're going to go over today is to help make that part easier. But when you think about the fair itself, the first thing you think is it worthwhile for me as an Amazon private label seller? And as I'm sitting there and as I'm walking through those buildings and I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and I'm just sitting there looking and thinking and having time to digest the trip after coming back, my thought was if you can't build a multiple six-figure income business by walking through that building or those buildings and finding products, you ought to just get a job. I mean, it's just there are so many things there. There's every product that you could ever imagine, and then there's thousands that you've never seen or never even conceived. I mean, this is certainly it's just huge, and it's just massive to where I understand many people have problems finding products. If you can't walk by and something doesn't pop out and you can't figure it out there, you're probably not in the right place. So I'm convinced this is a perfect venue for Amazon private label sellers. I'm just convinced of that. I really felt like as I was walking through, for those of you who know a little bit about history, back in 1849 when we had a gold rush here in a place called Sutter's Mill here in the United States. Anyway, I felt like I was just walking through the streets or the stream, and I kept seeing gold. Now you of course have to go find it and dig it out, but there's so much there that it's I kind of felt like it was a modern day gold rush. And I think that you got to approach it with those terms. So ultimately, I think the first step, if you're really deciding if it's for you and you should go, some other qualifiers we're going to talk about in a second. But I just came back with, I paid for my trip many, many times over. I think I found 4 products that I'm still in the kind of final negotiation stages right now, getting them produced and getting going, that I'm thinking that even if those products make a minimum of $1,000 a month, each month will pay for my 2 or 3 times over, pay for what it costs to go over. So not only that, it'll just obviously put more income in my Amazon private label business. So I just would have to say, just as a general overview, general concept, if there's a takeaway, is that the fair is very, very worthwhile for Amazon private label sellers. For those of you who are a little bit are trying to learn more about the fair, it's literally the largest wholesale market in the world. They do it twice a year, which it's in the town of what in English is Canton, but in Chinese they pronounce it as Guangzhou, and I'm not even going to pretend that I'm pronouncing that correctly with the right accent. But in English sounding, it's Guangzhou, and actually Guangzhou is a city of about 8 million people. So it's not like you're going to some little podunk town that's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's a big major metropolis city with all the modern conveniences and things that a city would have. So I mean, it's the same size as New York City. So it's not a small place. The fair itself has 3 different phases, and of course, phase 1, 2, and 3. Now, the thing about this fair is just so huge. I mean, I counted one place, one floor of one building that they're set up by just aisles, like of course any fair would be, but there were about 20, give or take, about 20 different vendors in each aisle. And then I'm figuring there was like 20 some aisles in each building. So you had 400 to 500 vendors in just one floor of one building. And there was this, for instance, there was one floor that had nothing but clocks and watches in it. So I'm sitting there thinking, there's 500 people there trying to sell clocks and watches. So, I mean, you had everything from toys, you had health and beauty aids, you had gifts, you had gardening supplies. I mean, it just went on and on and on. So the thing about the products is just the sheer magnitude of what things are. So with the different phases, one of the things that you have to decide is what phase is right for your product. Now, I went to phase 2 because that had household gifts and items, which I think for most Amazon kitchen items, things like that. And I think that's probably the best phase to consider going for an Amazon seller. Again, it obviously depends on your product. If you're doing tools or electronics, you might want to go to phase 1. If you're doing textiles or health issues or exercise equipment, things like that, maybe phase 3 is really where you want to go. But you want to go to their website, I think, which is cantonfair.org.cn, which is the Chinese designation, I guess. And it'll list all the different products. So I think if you want to go, you've got to decide which phase you want to go. Each phase is 5 days. It probably will take you a minimum of 3 days to get through the fair. Many people go for the entire 5 days, and we'll talk about how to go through the fair and have it be efficient in a minute. But again, you just have to take into account which phase you want to go. And a lot of people go to multiple phases. I just chose to go to phase two because that fit my particular products a little bit more. And I think it'll fit other people's products a little bit more as well. But anyway, just go through and decide which one, where you want to go. Admission is free. You have to go and basically just fill out an email form and apply. And then they'll tell you all the details and all the things you need to do. And then you go to the buyer's registration, show them your passport, all the, your invitation, and they print out a badge for you. And then you just walk right in. So pretty easy, simplistic process. They've been doing this, I think, 117 times, I think. So, what is that? They're doing it twice a year. I'm guessing it's 60, going on close to 60 years here now. So they've obviously got it figured out and what they're doing. But just as a general overview of the fair, it's just kind of one of those things where you're standing there and it kind of hits you as like, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. And it's kind of a neat feeling just being through the fair and as you're walking through the vendors. I mean, I just can't stress enough. I had a great time and the experience was wonderful. And more importantly, it's profitable because I think I found 4 items. And as I mentioned before, it paid for itself many, many times over the next several months. The next question I think is really, it's certainly a valid thing there. There's a lot to offer at the Canton Fair. So I guess really the next question, if you're listening, is, well, should you go or not? Well, let's take a look and let's go over some of the different things and talk about really who should go. I think if you're looking at this, one of the reasons that you go is to find different products than what everybody else has access to on Alibaba. I use Alibaba. My students on my course use Alibaba, and it's a great resource. I think it's better all the time. However, it's one of those things where if you can find a supplier on Alibaba, then so can everybody else. One of the benefits here is that everybody here is certainly, or the manufacturer in China is certainly not on Alibaba. So if they're here, you've got a chance of finding something that's unique that no one else has access to, which means nobody's going to try and duplicate your product. And you've got kind of a window of opportunity to get a product established and kind of separate from the rest of some of the other Amazon sellers. It's a good forum if you want to have something custom made. I was talking to one vendor and I liked one of the products they had, and he just starts throwing, I asked him, he said, we make whatever you want. So I mean, most of these people, they are big enough to do what you need, but yet small enough to make what you want. So it's one of those things to where if you want to have something custom made and really, you have a valid market, but you want to separate yourself from the rest of the other Amazon sellers, and you want to do something and tweak it and customize it. And I don't mean just change the color or put it in a different box or something. I mean, make a product in a different shape or make a unique product. This is where you want to go. Now, one of the things here that I want to make sure you understand, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but this, unlike Alibaba, these vendors are a little bit bigger in size. This is something they're not looking to make 100 pieces. They might have a minimum of somewhere around 1,000 pieces to 3,000 pieces. So if you're on a really, really tight budget, this is probably not for you. But if you're ready to take your business to the next level, then this is by far the perfect place to be, because my thought walking through is that this is where you're going to separate from everybody else, where if everybody else is going to one place, it gives you the opportunity literally to raise the bar and go and do something else. If you want to establish face-to-face relationship with your suppliers, and I've been dealing with suppliers for, 2.5 decades plus, and inevitably there will always be a time when something happens or you need something from them. If they know you, they like you, you know them, like them, and you can pick up the phone or Skype or email in this case and say, hey, I need you to help me with something. I think they're much, much more likely to do it if they know who you are and have connected to you as a person. One of the things I found, I did some part travel, I guess, just tourism, I guess, but as I met some of the Chinese people, and as I said earlier, traveling around the world, I'm not sure I've met a group of people who are more friendly and welcoming and polite. And just dealing with them, and the fact if you're polite back to them, every person I dealt with seemed to want to go out of their way to help me. So I was just very pleased with just the fact that I got to know some of the people who I'm going to be doing business with. And to me, that's important. Well, more so maybe to me than some other people, but I think that's important. I think another thing here is that when you're going back and forth on Alibaba, realize these people are getting dozens of emails a day probably. So it's either they're willing to negotiate or not. But if you're sitting there and they've known you've taken a 20-hour plus plane ride and you're willing to come there to talk to them, they know that you're serious. And I found that I got better pricing just by standing there and negotiating face to face than I would going back and forth through email. So I think just that alone makes it viable from a financial standpoint to be able to go and talk to them. The other thing in this too is discovery. I mean, I think as you go through this and you're looking for your particular products, I think as an Amazon seller, you ought to always be looking for your next brand or your next product. I think there's time here at this fair to walk through and you see things just as you walk by that you would have never thought of, never imagined. It hits you, gosh, that might be a good product or to sell. That might be a good brand. And when you've got 20,000 vendors that you're walking by and they're all having products to sell, it's not a matter of finding, it's a matter of information overload and screening to get down to what you want to do. So ultimately, I think this trip is something that will separate your business from the masses. So again, is it for everybody? Don't think so. But at the same time, if you know what to expect and if you're prepared to go over and know what you're going to look for, I think you can capitalize and make a good bit of money here. Now, the other part of this is fun. I mean, you just want to go and experience the cultural and uniqueness of China. And it's funny. China, I don't know what your impression of China is, and I'm not sure what mine was, but China is a very modern country. I mean, it's I don't know if I was expecting it to be like TV things from way back, but you'll see a lot of old things that were built in the communist era of the 50s, but right next to it, you'll see the modern skyscraper. And it's just the modern parts of China are just like anywhere else, will rival anywhere else in the world. The roads, the infrastructure, nice restaurants. I mean, it's very, very much a 21st century country. And I'm not sure that's what I was expecting or not. I guess I really knew that, but it was fun. I actually flew into Hong Kong for a day and then spent some time there as a tourist and then went to Macau and gambled a little bit and came back and then took a train into Canton and kind of spent a little bit of time traveling. And that was really fun to go because, you're thinking about this, and at least if you're of a certain age, you never really envision going to China. China has not been open to those in the West for all that long. So, I mean, it's really, you should take a moment, and when it hits you, when you have that seminal moment, says I'm in China, that's kind of neat. And I don't want to underestimate that because that's kind of, you can't live by Amazon alone in life. You got to have a little bit of pleasure in there. But again, I want to emphasize that if you're on a very, very tight budget, if you're just getting started, if you're kind of bootstrapping it here, this is probably not the place for you to go. I think this is probably phase 2 of your business, step 2 of your business, to where you maybe have a product up and running and you're looking to do some different things and you've been through the learning curve. I think it's okay to go if you're starting out, if you're prepared to invest in your business and run your business. I have consultations with my students all the time, and they have various levels of what they want to make in their business. If you want, a lot of people tell me they want to make 6 figures in the business, which is wonderful. If you're at that stage, I think this is the place you need to go. If you're looking to just make a few hundred extra dollars to pay some bills or what, you certainly don't have to go. But I think this is something that I think in my background, I've probably been to 30, 40 different conventions over my life in different businesses and products and so forth. And every one of them paid off for me. And again, this one paid off huge. And again, I don't want you to go just to go. I want you to understand who it's for. And again, it's up to you to whether you go or not, but at least kind of have an idea of where you are in the business before you go. Let's talk about how to get the most out of the fair itself. Because one of the things that I think that I want to caution you on is the size and the mass of the fair is just so huge. It's very, very easy to get overwhelmed. It's just funny. You're standing there and you're thinking 20,000 vendors and like 18 different buildings and all these kind of things. Like, how am I going to get through all of this? And you kind of get that feeling of just overwhelming. When you get overwhelmed, you tend to shut down a little bit. Well, I think there's a possibility in it. If there's anything that I can help you with here, I want to try and give you a little bit of a plan that you can do beforehand so you can make the trip easier when you get there, and you want to have some of that apprehension and anxiety of, gosh, how am I going to get through all the fair? I think the first thing is to let me kind of walk you through here just some of the mass and the size, because this picture doesn't do it justice. These 3 buildings here are like 14, 15, and 16, I think they're called. They do them by numbers. But these all have like 4 floors each and 500 vendors a floor. So, I mean, just these 3 buildings alone would be enough to be worthwhile. This is so huge that this little bridge that you see here that goes across the street, I didn't measure it, and I don't know how long it is, but I'm guessing it's about half a mile. So if that gives you any process of scale, these buildings are just massive. And then they even had some different buildings back here as well and different things. So they were close to 20 different buildings, all with 3 and 4 floors and different things through here. You can see these buildings are twice the size of these. So it's just beyond massive of how big all of this is. So I think the thing to do from a plan of how to get the most out of your trip is when you go over, take the brand that you're looking for and know your prices, know your sales rank, know what things are before you go in and have all that written down. And then as you see vendors that, I mean, the first day I would just walk through, plan on taking your best walking shoes. I actually dressed up, well, I was dressed up, I put on a pair of khaki pants and some nice shoes, and I wanted to look professional. But you got to realize China is hot and it's muggy, and air conditioning is not as prevalent as we have here in the West. By like early morning, I was already just beyond. I should have worn shorts and walking shoes because it's just a hot place. But anyway, as you walk through, I think the first day what you want to do is just kind of know where the floors are for your particular items. You can see all that online. Find out where they are and just go to those buildings first. You'll find your registration where that R is in this first building. So you just want to kind of get dropped off here, get your registration, get your badge, all that stuff taken care of. And while you're here, you might as well go through these buildings. And then if you want, kind of walk through and go through the things back here. I think it's good just to get a feel for where you want to be, kind of get a lay of the land, if you will, that first day. Walk through the fair, find out what is not relevant to you, because quite frankly, most won't be relevant to you. Okay, eliminate that. And then by day two, come back or by day one, write down all the booth numbers and where they're located, so you can come back to them. And don't take a picture of them, write it down, because I started taking pictures, and by the time I had 6, 7 pictures, I really had forgotten where they were. I couldn't appreciate the scale. So quite frankly, some of them I wanted to go back to, I didn't get back to because I couldn't remember where they were. I thought I'd be able to remember all this, but it's just so big you can't. There's an old adage that says even the weakest pen is better than the strongest mind, right? So just write down the building, write down the floor, and then write down the aisles are by alphabet. So if you're in building 16, floor 3, aisle S, booth 22, something like that, you ought to be able to come back and find it. I just took a picture with my phone and of the booth itself thinking I would remember it, and it completely got lost. So that little tip right there will make it tremendously easier for you on your first day. It's just write it down by number so you'll know exactly how to get back to it. Then the second day, go back and the vendors who you want to talk to, go back and start negotiating about the products, talk with them, doing whatever you want to do. You ought to be able to get that done in a day, maybe even less, depending on how many products you're looking for. Day 3, I would walk through again with a different set of eyes. The first day, you're really thinking of your own product. The second day, you're then negotiating. The third day, maybe you go through and you kind of take the blinders off and you walk through with a perspective of, would this be a good product for me? Would this be something I can make a brand out of? And then just open your eyes to possibilities, because I'm a big believer in the word of discovery, where you do things, you don't know where it's going to go and where it's going to develop. But if you're walking through with no agenda, no particular products, I think that you're going to find something, and you never know if you're going to find that next $100,000 a year business, because I'm telling you, it's there if you just look in the stream and are able to pick it out. So go to the fair and do that. And then if you want to go back your fourth day and negotiate, you can do that. Now the phase is 5 days. And physically, I came out. I'm not sure I could have made the entire 5 days. I could now that I know what to do. But on my first trip, it's, you're fighting jet lag. You're fighting. I'll bet you I walked a minimum of 5 miles that first day, and maybe a little bit more. But if I knew now what I'm doing, I could cut all that down dramatically. That's what I'm hoping that you can take away from this, from some of my experience. But that's how you go through the fair, because I had people tell me it's massive, it's this, and I've been to trade shows. It's not that big a deal. And I said, I can handle this. Well, I mean, I can handle it, but it was still just massive beyond my own comprehension, which is really kind of what China is in a nutshell. There's just so many people. Everything is just so massive in such bigger quantities than what we have in the West, from the buildings and the density. It's just different. And you have to be prepared for that going over. All right, let's talk about finding products. And I think as an Amazon seller here, you gotta kind of go through, and we talked a little bit about this a second ago, but I think you've got to decide on whether you want to go to one or multiple phases. If you're just going the first time, I think it's okay just to pick one phase, find out what's there for your particular or what your particular products are and what phase they're going to be in, and just pick and do that. We just talked about the knowledge a second ago of starting out what you're looking for, what you just came back for. Again, we just talked about this for a second, and then just go through the discovery. But if you're going through all these and finding products, they're going to jump out at you. There's something that I think if you're in the right frame of mind, all this stuff is just going to happen and it's going to fall in your lap. And again, I'm oversimplifying that and make that sound easier, I guess, than it is, because obviously nothing's easy. But if you go through this, the whole reason you're going is to find products. And again, if you can't find products here, you got to go get a job. Talk about dealing with suppliers. You always wonder. I had a lot of people ask me before, are you going to get a translator or will they speak English? And what I found is that 90% of the booths had somebody in here who could speak English more than well enough to communicate. Now, they might not have been able to write the great American novel, but they spoke English well enough to communicate. And what I always found, it always amazes me that how well people speak English everywhere, because English and Chinese are about as different as as any two languages can be. So the fact that they can speak it and I can understand it, I think that's amazing. So I guess I'm just fortunate that my ancestors had the bigger guns and were able to not only spread what they had, but spread the language. I don't have to learn another language. So if you speak English, you're extremely fortunate that most people will be able to do that. Be polite. Their culture is formal when it comes to politeness and the bowing and this kind, pleasant people. And you just want to be polite back. I think that was the old adage about getting more with honey and all that. I think it's just so appropriate, especially here. And realize too, they want to work with you, that they got to make a profit too. So it's not like when you start talking about prices, when you negotiate and all these things, you want to leave some room for them to make money. You want to walk away to where they're happy to deal with you and you're happy to deal with them. Because again, there will come a time when you need them. And if they like you, they're of course much more willing to do something for you. When back in November, I guess it was right after Thanksgiving, I had one of my items that I had ordered more quantity for inventory, prepared for Christmas, but the Cyber Monday, whatever it is, the right after Thanksgiving, I sold a whole lot more than what I had anticipated. And I really thought if this continues, I'm gonna run out by middle of December, which obviously is not very good. So I called the supplier in a panic and told them what happened. And they said the first thing is, we understand, we'll work with you. And normally it had taken them several days to get products out. They got it out in a day. And by doing that, I made an extra couple $1,000s just on that one product in December, simply because I had a good relationship with the supplier. I liked them and they liked me. If I'd have gone down and tried to get them down that extra 2 cents cheaper, they probably would have told me to bleep off and not worried about it, because it would have been worth it for them. So when I'm sitting there picking up pennies, I'd have been losing dollars. So I encourage you, when you talk to them, don't worry so much about price, but factor some of the other things into that as well. The culture is one of negotiation. They will expect you to negotiate on price and quality. And quite frankly, if you accept their first or even first couple of offers, they'll probably see you as a rube and kind of wonder about you. So you want to approach this with some savvy and some professionalism in what you're doing. They will be prepared to take orders at the show. They'll walk around with a clipboard and piece of paper and try and, somewhat like a car salesman, I guess, where they'll try and do things right there on the spot. It's okay if you do that. It's okay if you want to come home and think about it. That's your choice. And all of these things, I think you need to be prepared to walk away. And that's part of one of your biggest things, I think, in dealing in any situation and doing that. So the best deal again here is a win-win. So before we get going to everything, I've been kind of chatting here and, so forth and so on. Is what we're doing helpful so far? If you could, maybe just type in the box or something. We'll make sure we're on the right path, right thing for everybody. So everybody feeling good and learning a lot at this point? Okay. All right. I'm getting very interesting. It's great. Interesting. Thank you. Very helpful. Very helpful. Great. Okay. All right. Well, good. Just want to make sure we're on the right track, because again, I want to nail my book report that we talked about. What I want to take just a second out. It's just funny, the cultural things that happen. And I want to tell you just a funny story that was funny to me anyway. But as I mentioned, the Chinese people are very, very polite. And it seems like every person who's there in a booth is a 22, 23, 24-year-old girl. And I guess maybe because they're that age, I guess, I don't know, but they seem to speak English very well. And makes sense to put them out there to communicate, because most of the people coming to the show are speaking English. It's not that they're from all over the world, but of course, English is probably the biggest language spoken there. So I'm walking through and I'm noticing that all of these, again, I'm 52. I've been married a long time and whatever else, but I'm walking through, and by Western standards, all these young girls are flirting with me. They're being nice. They're smiling. They're doing all these things. Now, this ain't my first rodeo. I know they're smiling and doing this because they're wanting me to buy something from them. Obviously I get that. But there's not a guy out there who whether you're 20 or you're 30 or you're 70, who doesn't enjoy the attention of somebody else from a young girl like that. And I'm not embarrassed to say that I was enjoying this. My head had been inflated to, well beyond its normal size. And I mean, I'm just going through the universal standard here that just chicks dig Amazon men. I'm kind of enjoying this, thinking this through, and like I said, I have to admit I was enjoying it. Now I know by their standards, they weren't flirting at all. They were just being nice and polite. And again, cultural differences here. But as an old guy, I'm choosing to believe what I want to believe at this point. So I walk into this one booth, and there's a typical 23-year-old little girl there, and I smile and say hello, and she walks over and she hands me a bottle of plastic bottle of water, and I say thank you, and she looks at me and she bows and she bends over, and her kind of broken English, she says, "In China, we learn to respect our older elders. We learn to respect our older elders." And I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, it's like she just might as well have taken a dagger right to the heart. I mean, I could just like, was all that inflation in my head went out. And I'm just thinking, good gosh, the little girl was being nothing but polite and whatever else. But it's like, crush the old man, suck the mojo out of him, make him feel old. And again, I didn't say anything to her, but I have to admit it was just kind of funny that she reminded me that all those little girls before had not been flirting with me, even though I chose to believe that. But little things like that, and that's part of the fun of travel, I think, is some of the experiences you take back that you never expect and you never think about. But part of all of this and going to Canton or China and Hong Kong and all like I did, it's fun to go. You're standing there, and like you say, you have that moment where you're in China, and I never in my life thought I would end up in China. But regardless, kind of a fun little story there that you're going to have some experiences if you go that are kind of fun like that. So anyway, let's just get back on track here, and let's talk about suppliers other than the fair. And one of the things that I think that I went to go primarily to the fair, but I think too you've got to also understand, and I guess I would have gone to other places if if I would have realized this. But you live and you get better and so forth and so on. There are other fairs going on at the same time as the Canton Fair, and there you'll see a couple of things surrounding the fair because all these other places know so many people are there, they're trying to capitalize on that traffic. So in the building right next to the Canton Fair, there was a whole other convention going on of some similar type products. You might want to check into that. Now, the other thing in this too is you might want to go to Hong Kong. There is also a wholesale trade show right before the Canton Fair there. And Hong Kong is like 2 hours by train. It's like 2 hours from like a little ferry down the river from Canton to that. And then when you're there in Canton and then some of the surrounding areas, Canton, Shenzhou, all those cities, this is very much, Canton is very much an industrial part of China. I'm not sure there's really a lot of tourist areas per se, but this is a big manufacturing area. And you'll see lots of different showrooms. Here they would call them merchandise marts, where manufacturers from some of these small little towns come in and have showrooms on a regular daily basis where they go in and they meet with their customers there in these showrooms. There'll be big buildings and different things like that. So you might want to look into going out to some of these showrooms because many of them are within an hour of Canton and 2 or 3 at the very, very most. So if you can find somebody who was in your marketplace and you're going to get on a plane and go that far, it might be worthwhile for you to consider going a little bit farther out to some of these different places. So be aware of that going in. Travel arrangements. I had a little bit of apprehension and anxiety going to China for this as well, because again, this is not like just getting on a plane and going to Europe the next day. You obviously will need a passport to get into China. You will also need a visa. Most countries don't require this, but you need a visa to go to China, which the way that works is there are like 3 consulates in the United States. I think there's one in Los Angeles, there's one in Chicago, and one in Washington, D.C. And if you live close to those places, you're in pretty good shape. And I'm sure they have them in Europe and different places, Australia as well, Canada and so forth. But you just find your local consulate and you go in and get a visa. If you're not close to that, and I think Washington, D.C. is like 6 or 7 hours from me, so I obviously wasn't going to drive up there just to get a visa. There are companies, travel agencies in these cities where you send them your passport, which, it's fine to do. You send them your passport, they take the passport in and get the visa, and then they attach the visa to your passport, and then they mail you your passport back. You can get rush service on that if you're running out of time, but the visa, I think, for me here in the United States was $140, and I paid, I think off the top of my head, I think it was $50 to have it taken to the consulate and get the passport and mailed back to me. So figure on roughly $200 US to get that. And again, different in different company or countries, but probably very, very similar. One of the good things about going to China is I think the dollar is very strong against their currency at this point. And that's probably true for pounds and euros and different dollars, Australian dollars, et cetera, off of that as well. Airfare is very expensive. I mean, I'm coming from 12 time zones differently, or coming from 12 time zones here on the East Coast. So I don't think you can take a longer trip on a plane. But even still, my airfare was only $800. And if you book it early, it's going to be less. If you're coming from the West Coast of the United States or Europe, which is a far shorter trip, you might be looking at $400 or $500 just on your airfare. So I mean, really compared to other places, very, very inexpensive to travel to China right now. The hotels, what we might pay $300 to $500 for a really, really nice hotel, their hotels are $150 to $200. And I will tell you this is not a trip where you want to stay in a less than nice hotel, simply because you're going to crave some of your local things, and the Western hotels are going to have that. They're going to have restaurants where they have Western food, different, and plus most of these places are going to have some kind of transportation back and forth to the hotel. You've got shuttle buses that can get you back and forth. Sometimes you got to pay, sometimes you don't. Just depends on where you're going and how far the hotel is. Taxis are dirt cheap. I mean, it's just the currency exchange is very little here. So, I mean, you're looking hardly anything. And if you just want to go out and get in a taxi and go, it's not very, very much. You will need to go to that cantonfair.org.cn and basically fill out a form so you get an invitation and you're registered. Just do that ahead of time, and they literally will mail you through regular mail. Well, they'll email you, but then they'll regular mail a paper copy. So when you go to register, you just show them that, and it's pretty easy to go through. Now, one thing being in China that you should be aware of is that Google, which means Gmail, and YouTube, obviously part of Google, are not in China. And you got to remember, this is not a your constitution doesn't travel with you. You got to realize this is still a communist country, but they literally turn a blind eye on capitalism. So I guess from my terminology or thought process, the country is communist really in name only, because it looked like to me people were doing everything of what they wanted, but realize that some of your things are censored, which is why you don't get Gmail and Google and YouTube, and you don't have Facebook. So before you go over, make sure, now they do have YouTube, not YouTube, Yahoo. They do have Yahoo. So whether you need to email back with somebody at home or find a way to communicate, make sure you understand this going over, because I knew they didn't have Google, but I didn't know they didn't have Gmail, which I should have assumed, but they didn't. And I kind of got behind in my work and I missed some emails because I was gone and I had no way to access it. So some timely things I missed, and which was my fault, but this is because I didn't know any better. But make sure you just plan ahead, and I think you'll be fine. Another option, and it's actually cheaper to fly into Hong Kong if you want, and if you want to combine some being a tourist with this trip, Hong Kong is much more tourist friendly than what going to Guangzhou or Canton is. You can fly into Hong Kong for a day or two and enjoy the city there, and then take your train or boat ferry into Guangzhou and do that. So again, another option. Another thing you consider doing, you could fly into Hawaii if you're coming from the United States and stay there for a couple of days, and then go because you're going to fly right over Hawaii anyway. So maybe you stop there and then you fly from Hawaii to China. It's another way to break up that long flight as well. So a couple of things on your travel arrangements. If you traveled quite a bit, you're going to be fine. If you're new to travel, there's a little bit of anxiety here, but if you know some of these things, it's all going to work its way out. So, pretty good setup there in what it is. But just some of these things that I'm telling you now are more than enough to get you going. Far more information than what I had to figure out and blaze a trail on my own. All right. Some of the difficulties, though, and I want you to be prepared for this, because again, Guangzhou is not a tourist city. It's a business city. It's an industrial city. It's growing and it's evolving. But there is a little bit of anxiety and apprehension of going to China and going through all this, and I understand, because your logistics and travel and the concern about the language and all those things are there. And all I can say is the more preparation you do, the less of the fear and anxiety you will have. And maybe you don't even have any fear and anxiety. I did. And I'm not embarrassed to say I had some apprehension, even as much as I've traveled. But make sure you carry cash in their currency. It's not like you can go to Europe and they all take dollars. Make sure that you have some of their currency. And probably the best place to do is there's ATMs in the hotels and the Western places all over. Go ahead and do that as opposed to changing money. But go ahead and carry cash, because I think the exchange rate now is like 6 to 1. So roughly every $100 in their money is like 15 American dollars, give or take. So, it's just know that going in. But the big thing is there are a lot of places that don't take credit cards. The taxi drivers, the restaurants, many of them don't take credit card. So you don't want to be somewhere and pull out your credit card and they look at you like, how are you going to pay for this? And then you don't have any money. But just make sure you carry more cash. You can always turn it back in at the exchange rates at the airport on the way back. The other thing in here is being overwhelmed by the fare. And I think many people, legitimately so, have that apprehension. I hope that by what we've talked about now, we've leveled it down a little bit and made it a little bit easier so you can go. I think when I go back again, and I will, it'll be 100 times easier just because I know what to expect and know what to do now, and I won't have any fear of the unknown. Safety concerns. For those of you who, especially ladies, I think in there, I think it's many ladies are uncomfortable traveling alone. I understand that. But I think in this, the culture is one of, it's very different than Western culture. I never felt like I was going to get robbed, or I never felt afraid in any way, shape, or form, and whether it be in the airports or the terminals or taxis or anything like that. It's a very different type of culture, and I think you have to be aware of that. But again, you're still in a city of 8 million people, and you have to take your normal precautions in doing that. But I think if you can stay with groups and whatever else, I think you'll be okay. But ultimately, any difficulties and obstacles you have, they're there, and you just have to be prepared for them. They are solvable, they are doable, but it takes a lot of effort to get over them, and just be aware of that going forward. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one here. And that's really kind of the download and the dump of information of going to the Canton Fair. And I think really you got 3 choices. You can do nothing. You can continue to buy your products on Alibaba, and that's fine. Many people make 6-figure businesses out of doing that. But I think where Amazon's going is more and more people come into that. That's still viable, but I think you have to raise the bar if you're going to continue to outpace your competition. And that's true whether you're in Amazon or in any business. And I think if you're ready to go to that next level, the next stage, I think this is something you should consider. I think if you want to go over there by yourself, like what I did, I think it's possible. I think it's problematic, and it's a hard trip. I mean, it's not an easy trip. It's doable, but just be prepared for everything from the apprehension to some of the travel difficulties to being a fish out of water type of scenario. So as long as you understand that going in, some people go over there, they're fine. And some people I think probably would struggle. The other thing in here is the third option is you can go with someone else who has been there, someone knows what to do, and somebody who can clear a path for you and make the whole process easier. So that's kind of what I've done here. As I was sitting there going to this trip, I was thinking, gosh, I've learned an awful lot that can help a lot of other people go. So what I decided to put together is what I call Amicon Canton. I think that's kind of a nice little rhyme to it. It was fun thinking of that. I went with a lot of different variations. But it's basically, it's going to be, we're going to have an Amazon convention, private label convention in the next fair. So with this, I want to just go over and talk a little bit about this. And if you're interested in this, I'd love to have you. If not, if you're going to go on your own, that's okay too. But I think this would be helpful with what I put together for lots of people who want to go. What we're going to do here in Amicon Canton, and actually Amicon is, I'm going to have another Amicon conference here in October, a little bit different agenda here, but this one is going to be strictly based around the fair in Canton. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to have a webinar before you go, and we're going to go into every nuance of everything of travel arrangements, everything of prepping for the fair, everything in like a tremendous amount more detail than what we're just touching on here. By the time you set foot in China, you'll be an expert before you even get there as we go through these webinars. So we're going to go through and do that live, question and answers, a whole different thing, and basically, other than just information, we're gonna make it so it's easy for you to come to the fair and you've got an agenda of what you're going to accomplish when you get there. The first day you arrive, we're going to have an evening reception. We're going to have everybody get together and we're going to meet, and we're just going to get to meet everybody, kind of digest in a more of a social setting versus a business setting, and we're going to get to meet some of the different friends and different people who you're going to be spending time with over the next several days. The second day, what we're going to do is we're going to have a full day of Amazon coaching and training. And then that's also going to include some time to help answer some questions about your business. So I'm going to do a kind of a combination of some more advanced techniques, whether that might be dealing with freight forwarders or getting your shipments directly sent to Amazon, maybe working on some different ways to save money on freight or doing buyer inspection services, things that as you're increasing your volume a little bit, that you're evolving beyond some of the getting started into some more advanced type of things. So I've been doing these types of things in my business for a while. And as I talk to many of my students who are coming through my Head Start course, of course, they're starting out at this point, but many of them are evolving. And these are the same types of questions that after you have your first product, you're ready to go into this more advanced type of coaching and training. So we're going to spend a lot of time going over those types of things. And then, this is not going to be a huge group of people. So there's going to be times to sit down and say, hey, I'm having this issue in my business. I have this question. Is there anybody here who can answer this? And we're just going to talk about it and get benefit from the group and learn. And most people are going to have some of the same questions and issues every day. So this is going to be a full day, face-to-face with me all day long, and then with some of the other successful Amazon sellers who are going to be sitting in the room. The third day, we're going to get on a bus, and we're going to take an excursion to some of these manufacturer showrooms outside of Canton that I mentioned a moment ago. So we're going to take and see if we can find some hidden suppliers, find some things that nobody else knows about, so you can get a tremendous leg up on some of your other Amazon sellers. This is something that I think is really, don't want to overstate this, but I think this could be a big deal in itself. If you found even one supplier here, that could be worth several $1,000s all in itself. The next thing is we're going to do a guided tour of the Canton Fair. We're just going to literally have everybody walk through, make sure the registration is there, get you there, shuttle bus, the whole thing, make sure you're comfortable, you know where to start. And we're going to walk through and then just kind of go through, and I'll probably negotiate a little bit with some suppliers if somebody wants me to, just to kind of get a feel for what's there and kind of just make it easier for you so you don't get overwhelmed that first day. And then you got day 5 and 6 if you want to, where if you want to walk through the Canton Fair by your own, go back and negotiate with some of the suppliers you found, go through that day of discovery that we talked about a moment ago. You've got some time to go through on your own pace there. And then after the fair, we're going to do a one-on-one 30-minute coaching phone call, because I want to make sure that you got everything out of not only the fair itself, but out of the coaching that we did while we were there. Any questions that you might have had following up with your supplier, that type of thing. I want to be able to help you one-on-one to be able to get those things done. So that's kind of what the Amicon Canton is. It's kind of a fun thing to say, Amicon Canton. Kind of has a nice ring to it. But I was really thinking like the Comic-Con convention. Let's have an Amicon. So that's kind of where all that came from. But all in all, this is going to be 4 days where we're going to spend all day together. And in that, my hope is that you get a tremendous amount of coaching. You get some ideas that basically can make your business. And I don't want to, again, overstate that too much, but not only me, but the other successful Amazon sellers are going to be there. You're going to walk away with some friends and colleagues that you're going to be able to work with going forward to have and help support your business. All right, that's kind of it in itself. So with the Canton Fair, we are still putting some things together as we speak. I'm trying to make it better. I've got some things that I can't announce yet, but things that I think are going to come out in the very, very near future. But I want you to go to markscottadams.com, Canton Fair. Take a look at all that, see what it all is. I have made this very, very reasonably priced. As you know, in all things, I don't charge prices like other people do, because I have some different agendas here. But very affordable to be able to come to the fair and meet and do all of this. And also too, I want you to be able to have some. I just want you to be able to see and grow your business. With that, let's go ahead and take some questions and answers. I'm hoping you got some things, so just go ahead and type that in the box. Let me see if I can go here. Okay, let me go back. And so maybe you got to jump on questions, so give me a second and go back and find those. All right, Kevin asks here, says, Mark, can you find some of these suppliers that are not on Alibaba online? You will find that all of these suppliers, Kevin, will be online. They'll either give you a catalog or a business card or something. And many of them will have what I call the typical Chinese website, where the translation is it's more of an interpretation. Why they call them interpreters versus translators, because the English won't make sense, but they'll still have their products up there, and you'll be able to see them and whatever else. And the other thing I didn't is I'm just sitting here thinking I didn't even bring up because I forgot. But another thing too is if you have samples sent to you, there's a cost and time of doing that. One of the tremendous benefits of this is being able to pick up the sample in your hand, hold it, everything else, and do that. So you get a tremendous time savings in being able to touch the product and talk about it and get a feel for it while you're there. Mark says, I have traveled to Japan on business several times. Could I assume basically the same issues regarding money accommodations and verbal communications? Some, I would say, Mark. What I would probably say is because Japan has been associated with the United States since World War II or after World War II, there are a lot more, my guess, I have never been to Japan. My guess is, however, that Japan is a little bit more advanced business-wise. You got to realize China's really kind of only been on the world stage in this for a relatively short time, and they're still growing and they're still learning. So this might be a little bit more tough, if you will, but again, it's doable. Mike says, did you find any very exciting new product trends? Where were other people very excited about buying and selling? What was one hot new product trend? Well, Mike, it seemed that every other vendor was selling drones. And, we all know about the thing about Amazon selling drones and for delivery and whatever else. But they've got 3 or 4 floors there. They're nothing but toys. I mean, everything from stuffed animals to electric toys, that kind of stuff. And it seemed like every time I'd walk down an aisle, and of course, I'm not in the toy niche here in Amazon, but I have to admit, I walked through just to kind of look at it because I enjoyed looking at the toys. But it seemed like every other booth had some kind of drone. You saw things from like literally little cheap plastic imitation kids' toys to very high end, more expensive drones that had high definition cameras on them. But as much as I kept seeing it, not an area that fits what I'm doing. But if somebody wanted to get in the drone business, I'm convinced drones right now are like cell phones were 15 years ago. They're going to be multi millionaires made in the drone business in the next 5 years, and all the accessories and things go along with that. So if somebody's interested in that area, you might ought to give that a look. Dates. Anthony is talking about. I think if you go into the marksadams.com Canton Fair, you'll see all the dates listed there. The next one is in October. They always have them in April and October. And again, it depends on the phase that you're doing. Phase 2 that I went to, and I got to go back and look at the page. I can't remember off the top of my head, Anthony, but I think the dates are like October 23rd through 27th, maybe. It's like 5 days in there. I might be a day off, but it's kind of in towards that middle end of October. Again, if you want to go to phase 1 the week before, phase 3, of course, would be the week after. Okay, Jed just asked, how often is the fair? I think we just answered that. Ken is asking, do they have samples while you were there to take home with you? No, Ken, it's more they've got their samples to show to everybody, but you freely access to pick them up, to touch them and whatever else. And if you wanted to order them there, you could order them there, I'm sure, just like anybody else. Now, again, another thought in this is when I went thinking and had that same question, if you caught them early in the fair, now again, realize most of these people who were doing it, they're not from Canton. They might be from 8 hours away in another part of China. But if they are close enough, maybe if they go back to their factory that day and you make arrangements, they might be able to bring something for you the next day. But it's possible, but I'm not sure how probable it is. Because again, I've set up booths and different things at trade shows, and I've been an exhibitor as well, and it's a tremendous amount of work and effort getting everything set up. So unfortunately, chances are they won't have things to take with you, usually, but you got to ask. Hanny asked here, said, do you think the quality of the sample will be the same as the actual products that I will order? That would be my guess. What I have found in dealing with Chinese people for the period I've been dealing with them now, I'm more concerned about Americans, quite frankly. And I say that, and that sounds a little jaded and whatever else, so be it. But all the Chinese people I've dealt with have been straightforward, and everybody thinks they're going to get scammed. I'm more concerned about the problems I have here. I haven't had any issues, and there's always issues coming up when you deal with something custom, but it's never one of integrity. And I haven't found them to be anything but the most honest people on the planet. All right. All right. Jason here is asking about negotiating. He says, from your experience, is it better to negotiate pricing after you got the catalog and walk away for a few days, or wait until you're back in your own country? Jason, I would say seller's choice off of that. If what I did, and this is again part of the learning curve that I had to go through when I went, and is I was a little overwhelmed and I was a little beat by jet lag. And I'm not. Some people handle jet lag well and some don't. I don't. Maybe other people just do a whole lot better than me. But you're tired, and I didn't want to get in a situation where it was mentally, for lack of a better word, I guess you want to be at your mental best when you're negotiating. You want to be able to think quickly. And I kind of had that jet lag in what I was doing. So I chose to find suppliers and then bring back rough prices and everything else and be able to meet them. And here I am now. I'm actually going back, and I spent a good part of today emailing back and forth with a follow-up on negotiating. So, but I have found this to be so much easier after the fact because they know me. And again, they knew I was there. They knew I was serious. This is not like contacting someone in Alibaba out of the blue. But ideally, Jason, if you know what products that you're interested in, you know what the prices are, and you know kind of what your numbers are before you go in and what you're looking for, I think it'd be better to do it there. So again, seller's choice. All right. Liz asks, were you able to meet any of the suppliers you use now face to face? No, Liz, none of the suppliers I deal with now were there because like most Amazon sellers, I started out with some smaller size suppliers and still work with all of those. Now, again, one of the things I want to make sure everybody realizes that if you're looking to go over and have 200 pieces made, this is probably not the place for you. If you want to go have 1,000 pieces made, 3,000 pieces made, the suppliers are there in droves. Now, again, if you go in and say, I want a sample order, I want to do a trial order, I think they'll do lesser orders for you. And I'm finding that to be very much the case. Again, they're going to start out in bigger supplier or bigger numbers. And because again, that's just the nature of the fair. Where this fair evolved is for like big department stores and big wholesalers and like national companies to go buy their product from China. You got to understand that the evolution here of where things are. We as Amazon sellers, we're not ordering big quantities from these suppliers. We're not Target. We're not Walmart. We're not major department stores. Up until the last few years, the only people who could make it work going to China and buying products were really, really big companies because they had the buying power and the dollars in their pockets to be able to go do it. Just now, as the internet has come along and China has become more and more open and more capitalistic in the way they do things, are you finding that these small suppliers, not small, but small enough to be profitable dealing with somebody who's going to order 1,000 pieces, are starting to spring up? And you're seeing literally a revolution in China of entrepreneurs. And these are the people who are willing to do 200 pieces, 300 pieces. They'll take any order. But again, some of the people here, they've been established a long time, 20, 30 years. And for them, it's just not in their model, in their factory to be able to make certain quantities for Amazon sellers. But, that's just something to realize that I think now is the perfect place for all of this. And if you can get in and find some of these suppliers now, you're well ahead of all the other competition you have on Amazon. I hope that answers your question off of that. Stan says here, says, hello, Mark, new FBA Head Start subscriber. I haven't finished program yet. How early should I consider the trip? Should I establish some selling first? I'm pretty aggressive minded. Stan, here's the thing. If you're brand new, it's okay to go because there is a time lag in being able to do this. I mean, I have a lot of consultations with my Head Start students, and there's usually two types of people I deal with. And the person who comes in and says, hey, I just want to do a product or two. I'm looking for a little bit of extra spending money. I want to make couple $1,000 a month, which is wonderful. And then I'll deal with somebody who says, I'm very aggressive. I want to turn this into a full-time business. I want to make 6 figures. If that's the case, Stan, and by saying that if you're aggressive, I'm assuming you're in that category of the two people, then it's okay to go if you're brand new. Now, again, realize that, again, the quantities are required are a little bit bigger than what you would have going to Alibaba or somewhere else. But it's okay for somebody to go if you're brand new and if you're truly looking at this as a business. I mean, still, spending a few $1,000s on products. When I had my retail clothing stores and I went to 2 or 3 conventions a year to find products, and again, before you had the internet, conventions were a much bigger scenario because you just had to see things. You couldn't see them any other way unless it was a catalog. But I did most of my buying at conventions, and I was spending, I'd go to a convention, spend $30,000, $40,000 and not think twice about it. Well, here, again, and I had well into seven figures in a business I was doing too. So, I mean, it just depends on where you are, Stan. If you feel comfortable in that you're trying to build a successful full-time business, it's okay to go if you're new. I mean, there's no cutoff line. But again, realize that I think in all the things, like what I teach in the course, is that you want to get your first product up and running. You want to go through the learning curve. But that's more just as a seller. You got to think of it as a buyer versus a seller. It's two different types of scenarios. Long-winded way to say, Stan, is that if you feel aggressive in doing this, I would have no problem having you go day one, as long as you understand of what the fair is and what you're looking for and to go. So I don't think it's a hindrance if you're not an experienced seller, as long as you, in your words, want to be aggressive. Anthony says, are they expecting you to pay deposits there? A lot of these people too are, as we talk about in the Head Start program and just the Amazon community in general, you want to try and pay by PayPal, credit card if possible, all those kind of things. You got to realize too, I'm a little bit different on when it comes to payment. I don't mind paying somebody with a wire transfer as long as I know who they are. These people who are coming to this particular convention, they're credible. They've been in business a while. They've got money to pay to be there. This isn't some fly-by-night people who are there. So, I mean, again, and I never really buy enough at one shot to where if I lose $2,000, $1,500, whatever it is on a purchase, I'm not going to end up standing in line for government cheese. I'm pretty fortunate. So it's money that I can afford to lose. If it's money you can't afford to lose, then, again, different scenario. But again, coming back to your question, they'll make arrangements and they'll talk about however they do things. Many times they're looking for the typical 30% up front that you can wire transfer. And the people I met and dealt with, I would have no trouble doing that. Really, the standard of international business is doing wire transfers. So I think all the whole thing of I'm going to get scammed, I think is way exaggerated in the Amazon community. But again, I went off a little bit tangent to answer your question. But yes, they're looking for deposits when you set up a product. You don't have to pay them there because there's no way you're going to call your bank and have it wired anyway. So literally what you're doing is you're making all your arrangements there. And when you come back, you can finalize whatever you're doing and then wire money or PayPal or however you do. And some obviously will take PayPal, but a lot won't. Do they want to see your business card or other information about your business? Now, one of the things that you do want to do, Scott, is you do want to have business cards made because actually that's one of the requirements to get into the Canton Fair is they're looking for your passport, your invitation, and a business card. Now, in this too, they want your business card not for any reason other than just so they'll have contact information for you. So whatever company you have, if you have, I don't know, I'm looking around my desk now. Let's say you're in the computer mouse business. You want to go and just have a business card made with an email address on there and your name, and that's fine. That's all you need to do. You hear a lot of people say that you want to have, you want to pretend to be something other than the owner of your company. Well, I mean, again, that's fine. I took that advice and I had something, I put my name on the name of my Amazon brand and made myself vice president of purchasing. It's kind of nice when you own a company, you can give yourself a promotion or whatever title that you want. But once you started talking to them, you're telling them what you're doing anyway. And one, I didn't find that they cared. They didn't care if I was vice president of purchasing or owner of my own company. I'm never one to misrepresent myself. I'm just kind of not comfortable with, hey, I'm this big deal type of thing, this big company, because eventually it's going to come back to bite you. So my whole thing is just be upfront with them, tell them that you have a large e-commerce business in the United States, and here's my email address. That's what I would do going forward. So, that's because again, I heard somewhere else that they value the big buyer versus the owner. I didn't find that to be true. So, somebody else may have had a different experience, but that was mine, Scott. But you do need a business card, which, $10 to have those made, whatever they are, to be able to get into the fair. All right. Lee has a question here. Hi, Lee. Hadn't seen you in a while. Good to see you back. Can I refer your trip to other people outside of your Head Start group? Absolutely, Lee. The trip itself is not for people who were only part of the community. The trip is open to anybody who wants to go to China and wants a little bit of help and guidance. So absolutely, anybody who wants to go, they're certainly welcome. Ken has a question. Says, do each of the suppliers sell more than one product, or are they more specialized to an item? What I found, Ken, is that they're going to probably sell dozens and dozens and dozens of items. For instance, I happened to look at one booth. It was a multi-tool, like Swiss Army knife multi-tool type of booth, and that is fascinating because I'm a woodworker and do a lot of things with wood and knives and that kind of stuff, just in carving and so forth. But you're sitting there, and some of the things that one of the tricks is not to get involved in your personal shopping, because I'm sitting here thinking all these multi-tools are just really cool to use, and it was a lot of fun to do that. But you're going to see booths that are like 10 by 10. You're going to see booths that are 100 by 100 that take up 2 aisles. So just like most trade shows you've been, you've got people of different sizes, so it's going to range depending on the vendor. But most of the items are specialized and from the same category. So, for instance, if you're doing multi-tools, they're going to be doing Swiss Army knives. They might be doing pocket knives. I mean, just all kinds of things that are very similar. So it's kind of related to the product in that way. All right. All right. Kevin says, Mark, can you not send emails from Gmail to the suppliers on Alibaba? Yes. Now, there are workarounds on that. And again, I'm not a tech guy, and I've had a couple of people tell me you can do this. And again, somebody would have to tell me again, because somebody told me and I didn't recognize what they were talking about. You can do workarounds there. And the suppliers who were there, they have some of these workarounds. But I'm thinking I'm there for 5 days. I'm not going to completely rework all of my different stuff and whatever, so I can communicate. What I would do in the future is just, I have a Yahoo email address as well. I just will work with Yahoo that week and just make sure everybody I knew, whether it be whomever it was, that I was going to be out of the country. I mean, I didn't realize that. Now, here's the funny thing. If you're in Hong Kong, you got access to all that. If you're in Macau, you got access to all that, because those are really, I can't quite figure out the political things here, but you got to have visas to go into those places, and they have different money and different language. So as far as I'm concerned, they're different countries. But when I say no, none of this stuff, it's in what I would call, I don't know if China proper is the right word, but Canton, Guangzhou, and that. And yeah, Kevin, you probably can have some kind of workaround, and all the suppliers will be able to communicate with you. Mike says, how much would it cost for the entire trip if you spent a week at the fair? Airfare is very, very cheap. Going to where I am on the East Coast, which again, the longest trip you can take in the world, 12 time zones. It cost me $800 for my flight, 808 something, roughly $800. If you're a shorter distance, it's going to be less. If you book it sooner, it might be down as little as $600. I mean, for where I am, just to go to Paris, it's $1,500. So, I mean, the flight here is dirt cheap relative to what other flights cost. Hotels, it just depends on how early you book, where you want to stay, that type of thing. Hotels typically, $150, $200 for a really, really nice hotel. You certainly have different levels of hotel. I stayed in a hotel that was relatively close, but one of the things you got to realize is that these are hotels that would be $75, $100 a night in normal times where you're not at the Canton Fair. Of course, they raise the prices for that. But the other thing is that I stayed in a place that was kind of a little frightening. It was funny. It was kind of like every Vietnam movie you've ever seen, where they're all riding bicycles and they had that, the bamboo straw hats on, the pointed hats. Well, that was the same kind of area, except that instead of bicycles, they were riding scooters and motorcycles, and they didn't have the hats. And it was kind of like going back in time. And it was a little bit frightening being away from that. But I booked so late, I couldn't get one of the better hotels. And again, a mistake that I made. Nice people in the hotel and all that. But, that was like $75, $80 a night, because that's all I could get. But if you got enough time now, pay the money to get a better hotel. Your body will appreciate it, because, again, this isn't like going 2 time zones. So anyway, so add that up by the number of days that you want to go. Food is not expensive. It's not like going to New York or London or something like that. It's probably close to what you would pay at home. So my total trip for being there for however long I was there, I mean, okay, well, again, even if you throw in staying 2 extra days in Hong Kong and all that kind of stuff, I think I spent like $1,500-$1,600. So, not a lot for what it is, but, I would say 2,000 would cover almost anything, anywhere, for anybody. Okay. Hope that answers your question there, Mike. Okay. Martin's got a question. It says, is it an advantage to say you're an Amazon seller, or should you keep that information to yourself? What I found is that I told them I sold on Amazon. I mean, I'm not one of, I want somebody to know who and what I am. And, I'm not a big fan of subterfuge and keeping cards close to the vest. I'd rather would be open. And, if somebody's selling, I want them to understand me so they can help me more. I want them to know as much about me as possible within reason. So, Martin, I'm not sure that there's an advantage or disadvantage to that, but all of them certainly know of Amazon. And because they're getting requests from Amazon sellers and for price quotes for products. So they're starting to come on board and understand that that's a growing, thriving thing. But I didn't find it to be, because I started out not telling them, and then I started telling them and didn't seem to make any difference anyway, because they don't care. They just want to sell products to you. That's why they're wholesalers. Okay. All right. Stan says, very nice. Thank you for the information. Well, thank you, Stan. Lee says, thanks. Okay. Robert just said here, how much did the trip cost? I think, Robert, we got a question before that. Of course, just answered that. All right. All right. And for those of you who have been on webinars before, I can't get through a webinar without mangling somebody's name. And I hate to do that, but I don't know how to say it any other way. And I always use the joke. I wish everybody would just change their name to Bob or John or something, or Mary or Sue. I can handle all that. But we've got one here, QAZAFI, and I'm going to say, I don't want to say Quasifi. I doubt that's right. I'm going to say, I'm going to apologize because I'm just going to mangle it. But anyway, he says, he joined late. I'd like to start an online business with Amazon, but do not have any experience. Can you recommend a course for me to learn the A to Z of selling online, particularly Amazon? Well, in that, we probably, I see just by the names, we've got quite a few of my course members here. I actually have a course. It's FBAHeadstart.com. And it's really a course that's going to show you everything you need to know to get started. It's very inexpensive. I think as we record this, I think the Amazing Selling Machine has just gone to $5,000 or $6,000 or some such, whatever it is. I've kept my course down to it's still $297, and I'm convinced it's got more information in it than theirs does. We have several hundred members in our course, and many of them are doing really, really well at this point. So if you want to take a look at that, it's FBAHeadstart.com, and go there, and that'll get you up and running. And hope that you choose to join us there. And by that time, maybe we can talk, and I can learn how to pronounce your name. Again, I apologize for mangling your name. Slightly off track question here, but hey, if you don't ask, if you order 1,000 or 10,000 items, what kind of discounts can you expect? Question from Anthony. It's amazing. Again, it really depends on what's the standard for your particular items. But when I would go in and say, what's the price on this item? That's just what I always started out with. And then started worrying about quality or quantity and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you're going to always want to do some different packaging and private label and that kind of stuff. But the prices you're getting, I found to be 30 to 40% less than what I would get on Alibaba. So again, it may not be that much less on everything, Anthony. So I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to exaggerate there by any means, but that's what I'm finding on my individual products. Now, again, that's the difference in ordering 3,000 maybe versus 500. And I didn't get into 10,000 because that's beyond what I want to, I think it's worthwhile. But again, what I did is I found the prices there where I walked away thinking just buying the products, the cost savings by negotiating face-to-face here are more than enough to pay for the trip and then some, and then the relationships. And again, I don't want to get on the Canton Fair parade too much. But if you're serious about the business, you got to go, and you'll make money doing it. You'll pay for your trip many, many times over. Lee says, Mark, I forwarded my Gmail to my other email addresses. It worked, and I was able to receive my Gmail emails also. Lee, I did that with my Yahoo stuff. I just figured that out a little bit too late. I just was a little bit unprepared because I knew they didn't have Facebook, and I knew they didn't have Google. But for whatever reason, I didn't associate Gmail with Google, which obviously I should, and I just missed that. There are workarounds. But I just want everybody to be aware of that. But thanks for the input there, Lee. Jed has a question. This is cheap. Cost me $4,000 for New Zealand to U.S. at Christmas. Yeah, you're right. And it's just airfare everywhere. I mean, I'm convinced it's the dollar exchange rate. It has to be, or the Western currency exchange rate going to China. Jed, from where you are in New Zealand, I think the flight there is 7-8 hours. I actually had another one of our members who was from Australia who was there. And we're about the Gmail too, is that she and I were going to meet for lunch and talk. I was actually able to meet a couple of my students in Hong Kong and enjoyed that. And then I did meet one of them in China, but I was going to meet another one and we couldn't get together because we couldn't communicate. When you realize in the modern world that you either phone call, you text, you do a Facebook PM, you do email, and we didn't have either of those four. We couldn't get together and meet, and I feel bad because we both wanted to. But those are some of the different things that just you got to learn just by going through. Robert says here he stayed at the Westin Guangzhou, which that's right across from the fair. And Robert, that's an extremely expensive hotel. I found it was going for like $1,000 a night when I was there. But I will tell you this, and here's a little bit of a tip since you mentioned that. The Westin is connected right to a building. It's either 14 or 15 in there somewhere, but it is a really, really nice hotel. They've got a nice lobby in there. It's air conditioned. That's where I eat my meals at the end of the night. It's a very Western style, very affordable. It's not crazy price like hotel kind of thing. It's almost like it's I would call it an island oasis surrounded by a sea of chaos. And as I would kind of give out by 1 or 2 o'clock every day, I would just go sit over there and kind of sit in the air conditioning and kind of regroup a little bit and then go back and finish the day. But if you stayed there, that was obviously ideally the best place to stay. There are certainly lots of other places to stay that are good as well. But again, glad you brought that up because I meant to mention that, but I forgot about the Westin. He's also talking about public transportation is very cheap, taxis, that kind of stuff. Different things. It sounds like Robert obviously has already been if he stayed at there, but he's talking about, he said the vendors are aware of Amazon. He says the bad thing is they'll tell you what exactly or who is buying and how many. And that's one of the downsides of things in dealing with suppliers in China. Realize the copyright laws and all those kind of things are different. So you just have to be prepared for that. But again, the whole thing of being able to go in and make products unique and have them made to your specifications, I think that's a big part of, I think, where Amazon's going, is that a year from now, 2 years from now, some of the people who are doing custom things, which still didn't mean that you have a copyright or patent on it, but it's a whole lot harder to duplicate if it's a custom item versus what they sell as a standard item. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who make the choice now to do custom items. I think that's where they're going long term. I think that's where I see part of how I see the market going. Martin says thanks. Mike says thanks. Shirley says thank you, very informative. Robert agrees, says that was his answer. Okay, Jesse says thanks, Mark, very resourceful. Robert on here is funny. He says, I did change my name to Bob. So I know I can at least pronounce his name. Sue says, very unique, informative, interesting. And again, I'm just reading the ones I can read. There's some clever, funny people in here writing some funny things that I wish I could read. Kevin says, thanks for sharing your experience. I would give you an A+ and extra credit for arranging a field trip. Yeah, I do kind of feel like a school field trip in it, doesn't it? You can do reports and give A's and all kinds of stuff. But thank you for being here, Kevin. The whole thing about this trip, and for those of you who have gone to the markscottadams.com Canton, you'll notice for what it is not very expensive. 4 days with me and other successful Amazon sellers. And I say this just as a statement of fact and not embarrassed to say it. It'll change your business. I spend a large part of my day coaching people and quite frankly feel pretty good that I'm able to help the vast majority of people. This is going to be live in person, and it's going to be a coaching consultation scenario as much as it is finding products. So I really hope, this is something new for me. I'm trying. I never have all the answers. Everything's kind of always a work in progress, but I hope that some of you will consider going with me, because for those of you who are part of my Head Start group or whatever, that I always trying hard to help people, and I always over deliver. So there's some things again that I'm hoping, and I can't tell you about now because I don't want to promise them because they may not happen, but I feel comfortable they will. We got a lot more good things coming in this. So I really want to build this trip to China, and I hope some of you consider going with me, because I'd really love to have you and love to get a chance to get to know you that much better. And while we're on the subject in this too, Kevin. I am going to do putting together right now some of the touches to have a conference here in the United States, and I'm right now looking to do it in October in Orlando. So that would be a live event where we also do some coaching and then have more of a convention conference type of thing where we have people on stage and go into different training, go into all kinds of different things, maybe have some vendors there. So everybody here, take a look out for that as well. I mean, this Amazon industry is growing and I'm enjoying being part of it. And I can't say enough how much I appreciate those of you who come to webinars and participate in this. And it gives me tremendous joy to be able to help people do this. I've been doing it so long that, it is rewarding to do and great to hear feedback and people who want to go to China with us on that. But anyway, again, thanks for the comment there, Kevin. That's much appreciated. And I got my buddy here, QAZAFI. He's laughing. He says, "Thanks, no problems pronouncing my name. Actually, you almost said it right. Laugh out loud." So my intent is always to say it right, but as we all know, there's two things people laugh at. Well, probably a lot of things, but everybody who works with me in the group, they know I can't pronounce names, and they know that the tech gods never favor me. So it's kind of a process watching me muddle through technology, but I get it eventually. So all's well that ends well, to quote Mr. Shakespeare there. Jed says, what about local mobile phones? You obviously, when you're overseas, you want to make sure that your phone is turned off and the data plan is turned off. Now, again, I'm assuming other countries works the same way here, where if you leave your phone on, it's going to constantly search for data and roaming, and you might walk back with a $2,000 phone bill, and you obviously want to be able to avoid that. So what you do is you turn your phone off, the cellular data part of your settings off. I mean, I've got an iPhone. I presume it works the same way in the Android phones. And then you put it on airplane mode. You'll still be able to take pictures, use your phone that kind of way. But the other thing in this here, Jed, is that the decision I made, I'm thinking, okay, I've got email, I've got all these other things. I don't need a phone. But when I realized I got killed on Gmail and all the other stuff, I was out of touch for a while, and it took me a while to get caught up. And inevitably, I'm sure I missed some emails and some different things that I didn't intend to miss, but I did. But I would say when I go back, my service here is with AT&T in the United States, and I'm sure there are other comparable countries wherever they are, like where you are there in New Zealand. But you can pay to have your phone temporarily made to be an international phone. I think here it's like $30 for the month, and that gives you a small amount of data. So as long as you're not talking constantly, you can do that. If you got a pen or pencil, there's an app that I used to communicate with my wife when I was there. It was called Viber, Viber. And then there are other apps as well, to where you can talk on the phone, but you just got to be connected to Wi-Fi. While we're talking about Wi-Fi, they will have Wi-Fi at the fair, but I didn't find it to be very good. I couldn't stay connected with it on my phone. And maybe that's just me. Again, tech guys don't favor me. But instead of worrying about all that kind of stuff, pay the bleeping $30 and have access to your phone. That would be another thing. That's a mistake I made, Jed, is I didn't have phone service. And Lee writes in, right as I'm talking about Viber, she says there's another app called WeChat on iTunes where you can text free of charge. Same type of thing as Viber, and it's a good suggestion, Lee. Either of those would be fine. All right. Tom says, been selling on Amazon for about 4 to 5 months, but need to scale up. Can't do China yet. Suggestions, please. Well, again, going to this countdown, it is not an absolute. It is not like you're the scum of the earth if you don't go. I mean, it's not. It's nice to be able to go, and if you can't for scheduling reasons or whatever reasons, that's understandable. What I would consider or suggest that you do in this time is that stay in touch with me, because over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have all the information out for my Amicon Canton, which Amicon, of course, is short for Amazon Convention, but Amicon, or I'm going to have my Amicon Orlando here in October as well, or late September at this point. So nice conference to be able to come to. And again, meet and network people in the business, and you don't have to travel halfway around the world for most people. The other thing in this, I mean, again, if you're not able to do something like that, is just stay the course. There are lots of people who have developed high six-figure businesses on Amazon, and they didn't go to China. This just makes it easier. It makes it more profitable. And again, if you want to evolve and get into the next level of business, this is something that I will continue to go back, because I made a lot of money going for my own business, not only in savings, but finding products that I would have. There were 2 products that I've been wanting to do for 6 months. I hadn't been able to find anybody to do it at the price or the structure I wanted. And I walked in, and daggone it, the first 10 minutes, I didn't see a vendor who had it. and it was priced right and everything was like, so I mean, I don't know how much money I'll make on that product going forward, but in the first 10 minutes, I probably made 10 grand. I'm assuming, that's by the end of the year and then hopefully more beyond that. So, I mean, I'm sitting there, for me, the rest of the trip was, man, this is pretty cool. The rest of this is just gravy because I covered my cost and whatever else. So for those of you who are thinking, I think you got to think in terms of what it could be, not what it costs. You got to know the value of everything and the cost of nothing. Liz says, here's, how's the air quality in Canton? I found it to be better than what it was in Hong Kong. The first day I was there, I thought it was just foggy and cloudy. The next day it was foggy and cloudy, but the sun was out. I asked somebody, I said, is it always this foggy and cloudy? And he laughed and said, hey man, that ain't fog, that's smog. So, it's kind of one of those things to where the quantity of people, if you're just going there as a tourist and you're enjoying this, and I spent some time as a tourist, I didn't do all work, but it was a great trip in that, but little subtle things. Now, what's funny, and it's a very modern country. It really is. And that's part of what shocked me. I'm not sure I was expecting that, but you take away the fact that everybody was Oriental and they're all 5'2", and it's in the Chinese writing. It could have been any big city in the world. I mean, it was an amazing experience. One of the things about cultural differences, there's so many people there. You got to realize their spacing between people is different, I found, than it is here in the West. And people are very close to you, and that might make you a little bit uncomfortable. If you're standing there in the line, they'll cut in front of you, and it's like they'll bump into you and brush against you as you walk past them. After the first 3 or 4, couple hours, I'm getting annoyed by this, and I'm saying I'm like 6'3", so I could wipe out 3 or 4 of these with like one swing. But then I think they'd be able to get me and overcome me by sheer numbers. You realize it's their culture, and they're not doing anything other than going where they're going, and that's what they normally do. They're kind of very purposeful and focused when they're going somewhere, but then when you talk to them, they're incredibly nice and pleasant and all that kind of stuff. But I'm convinced every taxi driver thinks that they're a race car driver. I learned truly again what being white knuckled means, because I'm sitting there holding on for dear life in the back of those cabs as they're cutting in and out of spaces. And if you've ever driven in Italy, it's kind of like the same way. They don't use lanes. It's very chaotic on the roads. But again, if you're looking for an adventure, that's kind of what it is. All right. Kevin says, thanks, Mark. Great info. Love your course. Still learning the business. Well, again, got to stay at it, Kevin. It's everything is there for you to be successful. It's just a matter now of execution. We got a lot of people in the course who are doing really, really well. A lot of people who are starting to do this full time now. All right. Felissa says, I appreciate you wanted to share your experience and help us benefit from your trip. Hopefully we'll attend next year if you repeat the trip. Well, again, right now, like I said, I'm looking to go back in the next time and then every time thereafter, because it was such a productive trip for me as an Amazon seller. And many of you know me as just the videos and doing the courses and things like that. But you got to remember, too, I started out and still am a full-time Amazon seller. So that is where I spend some of my business. And I've been a merchant all of my adult life. So that's really, and I still am. And you got to do things like this to keep your business going. You can't just sit back and rest on your laurels. All right, Jed says local SIM. Yeah, Jed, you could get into all that stuff. So I'm a local SIM card, I guess. But if you're going to be there 3 or 4 days, just make the arrangement. Again, I'm not a tech expert, so maybe you know a whole lot more about that stuff than I do. But just do whatever works best for you. Local SIM card may work. I know of all that. I'm not sure how it all works, so I don't know how to answer that. But that's probably a viable solution. All right, Darren says, would it make sense to go to the end of one phase and start of another, or would this be biting off too much? What I find, Darren, is that's a viable strategy if you have products in both phases, because there's like a 2 or 3 day gap in between, so they can break down the booths and all the new people can come in and set up. Part of how I have my Amicon convention set up here is that if you want to go to phase 1 and go to the fair first, and then do all the training and coaching and go out to the marts and that kind of stuff, you can do that. Or either you can go first to the coaching and training and marts and then go to phase 2. So I tried to put it to where it fits for most Amazon sellers, but whether you're going to the Amicon or on your own, again, it depends on what phase has your products. So phase 2 for most Amazon sellers is where you want to go. And again, other people obviously are going to sell in phase one and phase three. You just gotta go what's best for you. All right, Robert is saying, talking about if your phone's unlocked, use China Mobile SIM cards. You can buy it there, which is a good idea if your phone. I'm not sure everybody's phone is unlocked, but you can take a Magic Jack, which is a good idea as well. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea. It's kind of one of the over internet Wi-Fi kind of things. The Wi-Fi there I found in the hotels anyway is fine. I mean, it seemed to be a little bit slower than what we have here, but from what I understand, the United States has slower internet than almost anywhere in the world. So I don't know, but it seemed to be certainly workable. Okay. Robert sounds like he's been there a lot. He says he thought the air was a little worse in Guangzhou. And Lee, who was one of my members, is joking. I'm making fun of my everybody's 5'2" joke. She says I'm 5'2". Well, like I said, everybody there is 5'2", and Lee is of Chinese descent. So she was a big help in planning the trip, and she actually helped me find a travel agent who was able to get my passport and visa. So good group of people we have. When you need something, you got somebody there who can help you in all kinds of different things. But don't take that personally, me saying I could swat 3 or 4 of them, but at my size, I guess I could. But anyway, it says, thanks, Mark. Very informative. I'm planning to go at scale here. Can I join the Head Start program now? Is it open? Imran, IMREN, again, I don't know, I'm sorry. Imran, I'm hoping I got that right. Yeah, my course is open all the time. It's not a scheduled release type of thing. You can go to the course and take that, and you'll have instant access to all the material, and you can go through at your own pace. And the other part of the group that's so nice is our Facebook group, where we've got quite a few people in there who will help you, willing to help. The whole motto there is kind of give help to get help. So a very, very giving group that continues to overwhelm of how helpful it is. The other thing we have in there, for those of you who may not know, is we have a review group where our members have formed a review group to where you can just send your products out and get reviews. So we've got everything there that's in place for you to learn how to find products, get the support from the Facebook group and the members webinars we do, kind of like this question and answer webinars. We do one of those once a month, and then the things to be able to market your product to review. So really, once you become part of my Head Start group, your biggest challenge, if you will, is to go out and just be able to find products, because everything else is in place for you to launch them. And by theory, I set it up to be exactly that way. So all you had to do was find products. Let me show you how to do that. Robert, I think Robert went on the same trip I did and had some of the same issues I did. He says, here's a tip for everyone. Make sure you get those train tickets from Hong Kong to Guangzhou in advance. They book very fast. I found that out. And I got a train going in from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, but I thought I just was going to just bebop along, stroll in and get a train ticket back to Hong Kong. And I'm standing there at the booth, and it's like, oh, sorry, sir, all sold out. I'm thinking, son of a, that's where some of the anxiety of the trip stuff comes through. But he says, okay, well, you can take a ferry back to Hong Kong. And I ended up doing that, but it was like an hour taxi ride to get to where the ferry is. Because again, Guangzhou is a big place. And it was like, I didn't take a slow boat to China. I guess I took a slow boat from China back to Hong Kong. But you're absolutely right. And that's one of the things that in this Amicon Canton, in the preparation webinar that we're going to go through, I'm going to make sure that you don't make the mistakes that I made in travel, and that your trip goes very, very smoothly, and that you don't have any anxiety, and all your efforts and energy can be focused on buying products and making money while you're there. All right. Imran says, awesome. Well, thank you for that. And Robert again is saying is that your hotel will help you book if you stay at a decent hotel. They sell train tickets at the exhibit hall, and that's where I got my tickets, was at the exhibit hall, Robert. But and if I'd have thought about it, I didn't buy it when I first got in because I wasn't sure when I was going to go back. Again, I knew I was kind of flying blind here, and I thought I just would deal with it. But on the last day of the fair, I just didn't even dawn on me that everybody in the world would be trying to go somewhere, and I underestimated. Again, some of the mistakes you make when you just go somewhere the first time that you just learn and able to help others on. The other thing I think what he's talking about here is that will help you book a stay at your hotel will help you book a stay. Yeah, you're right. He's saying the nicer hotels obviously have these concierge type services as well. Another thing too is that some of the nicer hotels will have booths set up or people who are associated with the fair, to where you can get your buyer's registration done there, and you don't have to do it at the at the fair itself, which I think is a big help. All right. I know we've been kind of talking a long bit here. Want to see if we can wrap things up and see if anybody else has any other questions. Go ahead and type them in. We'll try and get and address those. I hope this has been helpful to everybody, and I hope that some of you will want to join me on the next trip to Canton. When you go on the page, markscottadams.com, markscottadams.com/Canton-Fair, you'll see all the different things there and some of the different very reasonable pricing to be able to go for what that is. So I kind of feel like I just want to go on a trip with a bunch of friends and buddies and be able to address that. And that's really what it's for. But we're combining a little bit of fun and pleasure with a little bit of business as well. So I really, really hope that you want to go think that through. And, if you got any pre-convention questions on that, there's a link in there to go ahead and email me that. I'll try and get back to you off of after that. Got a few more questions kind of poked in here. Let me get to those. All right. Troy says, hi, Mark. Can you briefly speak on how the review process works via the Head Start group? Sure, Troy. The way that works is that we have basically the course is something I started back in November. As an Amazon seller, I was doing well, and I had a lot of my friends asking me about it. So I just decided to put it together in a course. If anybody who's an Amazon seller, it's kind of a lonely business. For those of us who are curious and like being out with people and that type of thing, that 2 or 3 hours a month that you have, it kind of gets lonely and you kind of get bored. So I found I was spending a lot of my time answering questions from friends who were Amazon sellers and so I basically put a course together, and it was to be able to create a community of like-minded sellers so we could do things in the long run. And I didn't imagine going to Canton at the time, but things like this and having the conventions and just to see where it would take. But we've had a lot of international students come in. So we decided to put together a review group. We have an American review group, we have a Canadian review group, and then we have a UK review group. As we have other members continue to come in, we'll expand that. But basically the way the review group works is that you create a coupon for a penny for your item. You get me the information, and then I send that out to everybody who's in the review group, and they go ahead and purchase your product and leave a review. So we've had several sellers now who have created and launched products, used a review group, and gotten to the first page within the first week. And in more competitive markets, it has given them a tremendous bump from, say, page 4 or 5 up to page 2. And you still need to do some other things but if you pick the right product and you set everything up as we teach in the course, that review group is just the icing on the cake that this gets your product to be viable very, very quickly. We've had several ASM members who have joined the group. I'm thinking ASM, my initials are MSA. Instead of ASM, which let's do the opposite of that. Let's just say we're MSAers. How about that? People who are in my group have found that the Facebook group is so helpful. We've had people who from ASM and other places come in just for that. And we're starting now to have people come in because they understand how valuable that the review group is. But regardless, the review group is something that it doesn't cost anything to be part of. Other people who have tried to put together paid groups at several $100s. There are some other good programs out there and they're worthwhile, but this alone, you send out one review, it pays for the price of the course and just an actual cost, not to mention your profits you'll get from it. But anyway, hopefully that answers your question off of that, Troy. I'm going to call you Q. How about that? QAZAFI. I'm going to call my buddy Q here. He says, does the course help you in identifying suitable products that will sell and finding reliable sellers? Absolutely. We talk about different ways to find products, dealing and negotiating with suppliers, a lot on how to deal through and go through Alibaba. And then if you want, we actually have 2 memberships. One is the VIP, which is $297, and then the other, which is the Prime membership, and that includes a 30-minute consultation to where actually most people who use that when we talk on the phone, it's more about helping them validate their markets and products and to make sure they're on the right page. And that's kind of offer insight on that. But, you can use that for anything that you want. But, yeah, the course is quite frankly, I'm kind of proud of it. And considering how expensive other courses are, tremendous bargain in what it is. Mike says, I'm going to try and make the trip. Thank you. Well, Mike, I certainly hope that we get a chance to meet. And I certainly hope that you get a chance to go because I need to make some new buddies here, new friends. All right. Jed says, very helpful. Thank you. Hanny says, I will go for sure. Hanny, glad to have you. Tom says, hey, Mark, we'll be in contact the next few days. Well, I look forward to hearing from you, Tom. Troy says, how many reviews do you recommend for the initial launch? And that's actually a really good question. Let's go into this for a second. This is an important point, I think. Let's go back 2 years in Amazon selling. You could probably have 20, 30 reviews, be on the first page, and get some good and decent sales out of it. Amazon is an emerging market. I mean, when I was way back in school, I actually had a degree in economics, and I spent a lot of time, one of my degrees was in economics, and I spent a lot of time studying emerging markets and how things develop from a macroeconomic standpoint. And Amazon is no different than any other market that's been in the past. It's just online. You start out where if you ever took a statistics course and you see that bell curve where you have the early adapters and different things in there, and then it gets to where it's growing, then it peaks, and then it falls off. If you didn't sleep through that class, maybe you remember that. But I still think Amazon is at the very beginning stages of that big bell curve, by the way. But to address the question, a couple years ago, maybe you might need 10, 15, 20 reviews and you could do really well. Up until a year ago, you had 50 reviews. You had more reviews than most people. As it has become easier to get reviews, and a lot of these review groups have sprung up. Again, I think 100 reviews now is the new 50, if you will. I think you got to have more to be competitive in the market than it was a year or certainly even 2 years ago. With our review group, at least in the U.S. group, now you don't need as many in the U.K. or Canada. They're smaller markets, and you got to go back and think 2 or 3 years ago from a review standpoint there. But I think if you start out with the 100 plus reviews that our group could give you, I think something other than the very, very, very most competitive markets will the 100 reviews will put you on the upper level of the first page on not all markets, but most of them. So, when I'm looking to do products now, I'm looking to do a minimum of 200 reviews. Now, again, I'm more aggressive than most people. I have the budget to do that, and I'm willing to do that because I think in the long run, it's an investment, not an expense. If you get in some markets that maybe they only need 50. So, regardless, I don't know how to answer that for sure, Troy, simply because I think it depends on the market and the product. But I guess the ultimate answer is that as many as you can get. All right. All right. My buddy Q says, thank you. Thanks, Q. I hope you're laughing now. I mean it funny. Muhammad here says, soon we'll travel with you very near to China, neighboring country, laugh out loud. Well, gosh, I hope you can make it with us there, Muhammad. Love to have you. Love to meet you. Love to have you in the group. All right. Hanny gives me an A+ for pronouncing her name right. Woohoo. I finally got somebody's name right. Or either that or start calling everybody Bob. How about that? All right. Q says, do you recommend to start with Amazon.com than Amazon.com UK? Well, in that, it really depends on where you live and what you want to do. We have in our community, we have UK members who sell in the US, some who sell in the UK, and some who sell in both. I think it's not a bad strategy. I mean, now the UK market is smaller, but it's not as competitive. And I think it'd be easier to crack in and crack that market and test your products there. And if they work, then just go ahead and set up an account and sell in the US. Just to go off on a tangent here, one of the things that I think is coming in Amazon, and I guess I got an email actually while I was in China that invited me to start selling my products in Canada. And some of my other members got that same email, to where I think in this next year or so, it's going to get where they're going to break down some of the barriers between the different places. So if you want to sell in Europe or Japan, or I can't remember, there's like 6 or 7 different Amazons out there. And then in addition to Amazon.com, which is in the US, the US is obviously the biggest but most competitive market. So I think you're going to see a lot of people going into some of these different markets. So Amazon is recognizing this and making it easier. So if that's the case, you got to start considering that and at least learning about going into some of the other markets. All right. And I've been pronouncing it wrong all the time. Lee, who is one of my fun members, and she does laugh at my jokes when I make jokes, so I love her for that. Says, I'm seriously thinking about going with you, and guys, sure would love to have you, even though you are 5'2". I won't wipe you out and 3 or 4 other people, I promise. But she says, my name is pronounced as in the Hawaiian, Lee, and I'm guessing that's Lay. Your book report is an A++, so thank you for that. Is it Lay, as in like what goes around the neck type of, am I pronouncing that right? All right, good deal. All right, well, I'm sorry. I've been calling you Lee all along, so you should have told me. I'm sorry again. Instead of Bob, maybe I can start calling you Bobby. How about that? All right, folks, I think it's about time to wind this down. And again, I want to thank everybody for being here. So whether you're interested in the Head Start course, love to have you there. Love to have you to come with me to China. I think there's a lot to offer there for both sides. Love to spend some time with you, and I hope you put some serious thought into doing that, because I don't think this is going to be a huge group, but I think it's going to be big enough to have some value to it, but yet small enough where everybody's able to work together. By the end of those 4 days, 4 or 5 days together, we're going to be we're going to be good friends, and you're going to be, more importantly, have people to deal with, kind of almost your own group, and people to contact and ask your questions and help others a long time after. Because there's actually going to be a Facebook group I'm going to put together for that as well. That'll be specific to the Amicon Canton, which is kind of fun to say. So that kind of answers that. But again, hope everybody looks coming in. One last question here from Jed says, when's the next Head Start webinar? Jed probably have that within the next week or so. I'm taking a few days off, going to the beach here next week, so not sure I'm going to work it around that, but that should be coming up. And for those of you who are wondering, we have our Head Start Q&A webinar. It's very similar to this, once a month, and within our group there. But with that said, I want to thank everybody again for being here. Hope you learned a lot, and I hope that you can go on the trip to Canton with me. Thanks so much, everybody. See you soon.